and welcome to this week's Maternity and Midwifery Hour. This is, I have to say, the 6th episode of the 7th series of Maternity Hour. My name's Sue Macdonald, and it's my delight to be chairing this evening's session, which is a little bit different. We've got a little mixture of things which will keep everybody interested, as we always do. And I'm joined by our student midwife, Zahra and Deb Murray. And we've also got a sample for those of you who couldn't get to the Personalised Maternity Care conference today. We've got a little sample of that as well. So you got a little bit of everything. But of course, we always start by putting our guests on the spot for a moment of the week to share with us. And I'll start with Debra.
My moment of the week, so I live out in the country, so sort of setting the scene for you there was I went for a little walk after work and I saw a little baby crow. I'm not entirely sure what they're called, but it just sort of hopped along. It actually walked along with me for a wee while, which I thought was really unusual, and that's my moment of the week. It was quite sweet, although they're quite it wasn't like it was kind of, they're quite ugly. I was trying to find another word to say, but yeah, it was a nice experience. But yeah, it needs to sort of grow its feathers a little bit.
Yeah, well, Debra, I'm sure that baby crow is very beautiful to its parents.
Yeah.
And they're quite large creatures, aren't they? But it's lovely to see a bit of spring.
It's on its own, and it was just a nice little moment. If you're into, I'm quite into like all of my birds and nature and stuff like that. So it was an unusual moment and also quite comical, really, as it was walking alongside me.
Fantastic. Thank you, Deb, for sharing that. Okay, Zahra, have you got a moment of the week you can share with us too?
I mean, I think I sound a little bit sad because it's a little bit midwifery related, but it was my first week back on labour ward after 7 months of being on placement, and I managed to see a true knot in the cord for the first time. Baby was fine, but yeah, there's a full knot in the cord, which I thought was a rare find, and I was quite surprised. Yeah.
So that's in your clinical book now.
Yes, it is definitely because it happens like 1 in sort of, is it 1,000? It's like 10,000 or something. So it's a very rare find. But yeah, I got to see that in placement when I was back.
Fantastic. That's kind of like a good omen, isn't it?
Yeah,
something
apparently.
Interesting to say back.
Yeah, so here we are. Maybe it's a good start.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for sharing your moments of the week. That's really lovely. Very different, but lovely. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm just going to do the thing just to explain to people where the Maternity and Midwifery Hour came from. And this is for the people who haven't perhaps been with us as long. But we started at the start of the pandemic, the first lockdown in March 2020, and I have to think quite hard for that because I can't believe we're now in our 3rd year and it's still around. And it was a way of connecting midwives, student midwives, people who wanted to be midwives, mums, people who worked in maternity care as well, just as a way of getting a nice chunk of information in quite an accessible way, and a way of getting your CPD, your continuing professional development, as you go. And we're supported by Mapflix, which is where you can get everything. It's a fantastic resource. So if you haven't tried to have a look at anything there, go along to Mapflix and have a look. I suspect Debra might talk a bit about that later, but it's a really good place to go if you're doing an essay, an assignment, if you're doing a dissertation, if you're doing some work for your revalidation. So I know that's where I'll be going a bit later in the year for mine next year. And it's all free, unless if you have the kind of little box sets. There is a charge for that, and you can get a subscription, but it's very, very reasonable to do that if you want to. And you're very welcome to share. So if you find a nice presentation and you want to share it with your colleagues and have a discussion about it in one of your spare moments, please do, because we like you to share. It's very good to share, and it helps you learn and develop. Like this, now that what's going through my mind now is Zahra's true knot, and I'm going to have to go and look up about that because I haven't seen one for a while myself. So thank you for that, Zahra, again. And I want to say a big thank you, as I know I always do, but I think it's important because especially at the moment, the NHS is in the news. A&E departments are in the news. They're terribly busy. People are really pressured and it's a difficult time. And I just want to say a big thank you to all of those people in the NHS who are working their socks off to make sure care is provided to people, and especially to the maternity services, because I know even through the COVID pandemic, the busiest times, midwives really worked hard to make sure that service was retained for mums and babies, and they did their best and did some very creative things, some of which we shared on the maternity hour. So big respect all the way around to our NHS colleagues, and a thank you to those of you who are covering sick leave and absence, and might be some holidays coming up because it's June now, so maybe there's going to be some time for people just to kind of recharge their batteries. Whatever you're doing, do look after yourselves though, and do try and charge your batteries yourself. And I'm not talking about the little ones you put in your gadgets, I'm talking about your internal batteries. We need to look after ourselves and each other at this time. Okay, I'm moving on swiftly to the news. Of course, we had the big 4-day celebration for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which was really lovely. I certainly enjoyed, one of my highlights would have been the Paddington marmalade sandwich and the Queen. And I thought that was lovely, really lovely, lovely touch. And of course, last week, we also had the Queen's birthday honours. And I want to say a big congratulations to everyone who got honours in that pronouncement. And a thank you for all you do, because it takes a lot to be able to be put forward for an award. If you want to know how to do it for chums and everything, all the information is on our Maternity and Midwifery Forum Spotlight, and you'll find out a bit more about the people who got the awards. It's a very special awards this year, reflected particularly sustained public service, environmental and sustainability concerns, and youth engagement. And there were a number of midwives, which is fantastic, and also some nurses who we work quite very closely with. And we have Ruth May, Chief Nursing Officer for England, who many of you will have seen on the TV at some of these medical briefings, who was made a Dame Commander. So congratulations to Ruth May. And then we had Commander of the British Empire, which is the CBE, Jill Walton, the Chief Executive of the Royal College of Midwives, known to many of you who are watching. And the Order of the British Empire, the OBE, went to Mary Renfrew, a professor at University of Dundee, and she's well known for research, and especially the Lancet Midwifery series. If you haven't read it, you need to read it, by the way, and the NMC Future Midwife and Midwifery Proficiencies. So she's had a huge effect on midwifery. So this is a well-deserved award. And then we had Heidi Thomas McGann, who you may know the name. She's a screenwriter and playwright for Services to Drama, and she is the creator and screenwriter for the Call the Midwife series. So you'll know her from there. Then we have Doreen Watkins, or Dottie Watkins. Congratulations to you. I don't know if you're watching, Dottie, but she's Head of Quality and Governance at Rotherham, and she had an OBE as well. And then we had two people that we know who had the Member of the British Empire, MBE, and that's Diane Buggy, who's a community midwife in Newcastle, for her work with refugee women. So well done, Diane. And Dr. Claire Harmer, who's Chief Executive of SANDS. She also had her MBE, so well done to Claire. And then we have two people who achieved the British Empire Medal, BEM, all these letters. And one of them is Ruqayya Khanum Mia, Deputy Associate Director of Nursing and Senior Midwife at Bradford, and Anne Trotter, Assistant Director of Education and Standards at the NMC. So you'll know these names very well. So congratulations and well done for all that you do to deserve this. And if you want to get more information about these awards, just have a look at the Maternity and Midwifery Forum Spotlight that's been drawn up by Dr. Jenny Hall. And also, I know Deb has had a hand in that also. So thank you for that. And I'm not going to go, I know I talked last week about the crisis at the moment and the difficulty with money, basically, and cost of living, which seems to be going up and up. And anyone who's going to a petrol station will see the prices going up. And of course, that impacts everything in our lives. So again, look out for people who are in trouble and see if you can help them. And if you're one of those in trouble, you know, find some means of getting help, and don't feel embarrassed if you need to go to a food bank. As I understand, there's quite a few trusts who are opening food banks in their locality for their staff to help them along. So you need to get the help if you need it, and look out for each other. Okay, I feel as though I've galloped through that, but we're going to, because we're starting off, you're going to have a little tempting section from the Personalised Maternity Care conference that was held today. So this is a little extra that you're going to get. And this is going to be from Claire Parker. It's a really nice presentation, so I know you're going to enjoy it. It says, and stay tuned, because after Claire, we'll have Zahra and Debra also joining us, and some time for questions for those of you who want to send in some questions. Usual business. So this should be the cue for Claire Parker now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Claire Parker. I'm a senior lecturer in midwifery at Anglia Ruskin University, and it's an absolute honour to be invited to talk to you today on devising personalised care plans. It looks like an absolutely fantastic day, and I'm really sorry that I can't be with you in person. I'm actually going to be teaching on the day of the conference, but I'd like to share some case studies with you today, which might give you some examples of how I'll use my experience in my previous post as consultant midwife to devise personalised care plans for women with particular needs and preferences. So with some background, a few weeks back, I took on the role of senior lecturer, and prior to that, I was a consultant midwife at a large teaching hospital in the east of England. And in those years working as consultant midwife, I supported hundreds of women to formulate birth plans. Prior to that, I was a matron and a ward manager as well. And I suppose as such, that's made me extremely passionate about the promotion and support of women's choice, the protection of women's reproductive rights, and the provision of respectful maternity care. So I'd like to start with Sarah's story. Sarah is a lady who presented herself to me at 16 weeks. She's self-referred actually to me at Birth Choices Clinic at 16 weeks, having previously been through Birth Choices Clinic in a previous pregnancy. And she was a low-risk booking, so she had no comorbidities whatsoever. She was between 30 and 40 years of age. And as such, she was under midwife-led care with her community team, which were actually out of area across the border. She did, however, have a mental health history of obsessive compulsive disorder that was quite severe, actually, and moderate anxiety. She was also being seen by the Wellbeing Clinic, which is our obstetrician who specialises in mental health conditions in pregnancy and providing additional support in that respect. And in addition to this, she had a needle phobia, and she had a fear of pain as well, that I wouldn't say was tocophobia, but obviously very much affected how she was viewing this upcoming labour and birth experience. The fear of pain affected her in the sense that she was very reluctant to go to the dentist and undertake smear tests, for example. Regarding her obstetric history, she had a baby previously, some years back. She'd had a spontaneous vertex delivery following an input from consultant midwife, my predecessor, who made a plan for Sarah to have an early epidural enabled to help her cope with the pain of labour. She was very keen for a repeat of the above experience that she'd had, excuse me, with her first child. She found it such a positive, such an empowering experience. She was looking forward to hopefully having exactly the same again this time round with this pregnancy. So throughout the course of the discussions, and we had several discussions, so most of the time in Birth Choices Clinic, I would speak to people on one occasion. On this occasion with Sarah, actually, we had very regular consultations scheduled, and in keeping with her OCD, they had to be on a particular day of the week at a particular time. And during excuse me, during these consultations, Sarah was able to share with me her preferences, her fears, address any concerns she had, and I was able to then share my opinions about her preferences, offer some clinical advice based on my experience and knowing the services that we had to offer at the trust that she was booked with ourselves. So of the preferences, the most important one for Sarah is that she wanted to avoid surgical birth. She was adamant that she didn't want to have a cesarean. She didn't want to have that extended length of stay that comes from cesarean birth. She ideally wanted an early discharge home. My thinking on this was that actually she was very well suited to a cesarean section, in the sense that, as those of you who've supported birth choices clinics in the past will appreciate, that many women who have an element of OCD or anxiety in their pregnancy are very well suited to elective cesarean section, because these women are looking for the most predictable birth outcome. Unfortunately, on this occasion, she was not keen on that idea at all. She wanted to avoid cesarean section, and of course she had no clinical indication for a cesarean section either. In light of her previous birth, which actually happened to be a very rapid labour and birth that she had previously, I suggested that she consider a home birth. She also didn't want to have a home birth, in the sense that she wanted to make use of all the services that we had on the obstetric unit, such as the anaesthetist, and have that early epidural that she'd mentioned to me. Regarding the pain, it's always very difficult to promise people that they're going to have an epidural, and I certainly would never do that with anybody, would never guarantee that they weren't going to feel any pain, but we were hopefully going to put a plan in place for her that would enable her to feel as little pain as possible, and to have that early epidural as soon as she was able to. She also had a particular preference for the most senior anaesthetist to be with her, and I think that's regarding her needle phobia. Obviously, she wanted to make sure that there was only one attempt at IV access that was sought, and to have that senior anaesthetist that was present who would ensure that her epidural was as effective as possible. Obviously, my concern on that front is that anaesthetists' presence can be very unpredictable. We tend to have 2 anaesthetists present at any one time at that trust, and you can never predict, obviously, that they're going to be available as and when you need them. And I did make this very clear to Sarah, who, of course, understood that this was a grave concern of hers throughout the pregnancy. She was also very confident and very keen to avoid an assisted birth. She was, again, coupled with her fear of pain and the extended length of stay that she was hoping to avoid, she was very keen to avoid birth assisted by forceps or Von-2s. And of course, in the background, I knew that even by a small degree, I have that knowledge that an epidural anesthesia can, of course, slightly increase the chance of assisted birth. However, I was confident that that wouldn't be the case with Sarah, having had a vaginal birth previously. She also had a particular, excuse me, a particular preference for a side room. And this was related to her OCD, and the fact that when she was becoming panicky, when her OCD was flaring up, she didn't want that to be visible to anybody else. So she was absolutely adamant that she wanted to have a side room throughout the experience. And of course, we're talking about a context in which we were dealing with COVID cases at the time. And at that trust, we didn't have any private rooms that could be booked in advance. So again, it was very difficult for me to be able to promise a side room for Sarah. So Sarah's plan, it evolved over time, as I've said. We had several consultations throughout the pregnancy, and it was a relationship that was built on trust. Sarah trusted me to listen to her fears and concerns, to take her very seriously, and I was able to then share my concerns with her and offer her all the possible solutions that we could formulate that might address her particular preferences. Throughout our many consultations, Sarah had many what-ifs that would come up very regularly, such as what if the anaesthetist isn't available? What if they can't site IV access on the first attempt? She didn't think she'd be able to cope with a second attempt at IV access. And over time, we did reach a final decision by around 32 weeks of pregnancy. And that was that she was going to be booked in for an induction of labour, thereby taking away that unpredictability in the sense that she would know when she would be presenting at hospital. She also was going to be invited into the obstetric unit, where she would then get that side room, and therefore she wouldn't have to have her induction of labour on the antenatal ward where she would be sharing a bay. She would actually be having the induction of labour in her own room on the obstetric unit where the anaesthetists were going to be, and hopefully have that early discharge from that same room. Of course, there was that plan for the early epidural and that early discharge home. Throughout the process, I was very keen to maintain that we took a very multidisciplinary team approach. Obviously, with Sarah being a low-risk booking and wanting to request interventions, I was then very keen to involve the obstetrician and anaesthetist wherever possible. And I think it's interesting how when we talk about women who request care outside of guidance, we often think about women who have several risk factors who request midwife-led care, often in midwife-led settings. But of course, we have many women also that request care outside of guidance in the sense that they have no clinical risk factors, but they still would like to request interventions that may pose additional risks to themselves or the baby. So in this circumstance, I was very keen to involve the full team wherever possible. So we involved the obstetrician. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Sarah was already under the wellbeing clinic where she was being supported regarding her anxiety and her OCD. And that consultant obstetrician was very supportive of Sarah and her preference to have an induction of labour, and agreed that that induction of labour could be booked, and also agreed for that induction of labour to be booked early, and it was eventually booked in the 37th week of pregnancy. The consultant anaesthetist, I approached her to actually speak with Sarah over the telephone on 2 or 3 occasions to address Sarah's concerns, most of which did involve the access to an epidural and a senior anaesthetist, and discussing IV access and use of tools such as using Emla cream prior to arriving on the hospital. And she was able to, the anaesthetist herself was able to inform the rest of the team so that in advance of that day, the full team would be aware of Sarah's preferences, so that when they cared for Sarah, they were very familiar with her case, and Sarah was very keen. She didn't want to have to repeat her preferences and her background to everybody. I also involved the induction of labour coordinator midwife. We were very fortunate. We had a fantastic induction of labour coordinator midwife role. This midwife would arrange Zoom classes for people that couldn't access the hospital due to COVID restrictions. And this midwife actually spoke with Sarah on several occasions and was really able to speak to Sarah in a very detailed way about what the induction of labour would involve. And also I was very conscious, as was the induction of labour coordinator midwife, to emphasise to Sarah that we may not be able to invite her in on that particular day, obviously with capacity being very high at the time with inductions of labour. I wanted Sarah to be aware that actually she may be delayed by a day or two, because obviously she had no clinical indication for that induction of labour, and she was completely understanding of that. And also the clinical lead midwives on the obstetric unit, so the coordinators of each shift on the obstetric unit, nearer the induction of labour date, I spoke to all of them and sent all Sarah's details across to them. So again, similar to the anaesthetic team, when Sarah would present on the day, that they would be fully briefed on Sarah's background and her fears and preferences, and would be better aware of how to support Sarah on the day. So Ellie's birth. Her induction of labour was actually delayed by 1 day. Again, that was because of acuity on the day that she was due to come in. She was fully briefed on that beforehand. It wasn't a surprise to her. Of course, it wasn't her preference, but she was invited in the following day. And her induction of labour did commence on delivery unit in her own room. IV access was cited by a senior anaesthetist who knew about Sarah's case ahead of the day. And actually on that day, I was the maternity bleep holder, and I was present on the obstetric unit myself, and I was in the room holding Sarah's hand while she had that IV access cited. And I think actually she laughed her way through the whole process. It certainly wasn't as bad as she feared. The epidural was cited prior to us breaking her waters, so prior to that ARM, and certainly before the onset of regular contractions itself. And Sarah went on to give birth in the night and had a non-assisted vaginal birth. And again, I was present on the obstetric unit when she birthed her baby. As manager of the day, that day I had been called back into work overnight and was delighted to be around to support the midwives that were caring for Sarah during the night. She did have an extended postnatal stay of 4 days, and I know that she was hoping to get home that same day. But as we'd explained to her, one of the risks of the induction of labour being so early in the 37th week is that the risk of complications with the baby postnatally, such as the increased risk of jaundice and feeding support. Luckily for Sarah, she did have access to a side room on the postnatal ward, which she made use of and was delighted about. Sarah gave the whole team feedback, and she said, "Thank you for making sure my birth plan was perfect. You made me feel safe, understood and cared for. Your support enabled me to have a positive birth experience." I just want to very briefly give you a second case study, which is a lady called Carly, who had a very, very similar background, although ended up with a slightly different plan. Her history was similar in the sense that she'd had a previous vaginal birth that on paper looked very straightforward to us as clinicians. However, to Carly, it was a particularly traumatic birth, and she'd waited several years before considering becoming pregnant again. Again, we had input from the full MDT, and also we had a maternal emotional wellbeing midwife support Carly, as she also had a background of anxiety and this secondary tocophobia that she was trying to manage as well. And Carly, we actually had a plan for a booked induction of labour and caesarean section, because throughout our consultations, Carly couldn't decide whether she would take the risk of going into labour before an induction of labour or whether she'd have an effective epidural. So actually opted to have both an induction of labour and the caesarean section booked. And in the end, 3 days before her booked caesarean section, we met face-to-face on site at the hospital, and she said to me that she wanted to cancel her induction of labour and go straight for the surgical birth option, which she had been hoping to avoid, but felt it was the right choice for her. And I just think her feedback is absolutely fantastic. I've been able to bond with my daughter instantly, something that took a backseat to trauma and recovery last time, and I'll never stop being grateful for that. The experience has been so different this time, and I owe it all to the team for supporting and informing my choice. So I'm very conscious that I'm probably reaching my limit of 15 minutes now, but I hope it's been useful to share some case studies with you today for people that are requesting care outside of guidance and people that are requesting interventions that are non-clinically indicated based on their personal preferences and choice. I'd just like to end by highlighting some of the MDT team working process that was so crucial to making both these women's plans come to fruition. And that was, I believe, it keeping both Carly and Zahra at the heart of everything we did regarding decision making, and fully informing these women of their full range of options and letting them be the final decision makers in their care. So obviously that began with myself as consultant midwife, who Zahra contacted in the first instance. I then got in contact with the obstetrician who was supporting her. The anaesthetist and her whole team were brought into the equation as well to take any queries that both women had and share information with their team. Also, the introduction of the induction of labour coordinator into the process really supported Zahra, I know, the first case that I presented. And then, of course, the obstetric unit midwife leads. These are the midwives that are going to be coordinating the whole of the shift where these women are going to be presenting and having their care episodes. So they need to be fully briefed on the processes and the preferences involved, and to have some background, because I'm sure many of you who've got experience in running birth choices clinics are aware that such women are really hesitant at repeating their story and their background to many practitioners as possible. So I believe we were so successful in giving some really personalised care to these women because we did work as a team very successfully in both cases. Thank you for your attention during these case studies. I'd love to take any questions or feedback that you have on these today or in the future. So if you want to, please do contact me at the email address below. And again, thank you very much for listening today. Have a great day.
Well, that was really interesting. So interesting to see that how this can really work on an individual basis. I think, like most midwives, I love a story because it makes the whole situation come alive, and all the research and the kind of supportive policy documents really come to life there. So that was fantastic. Well done on Claire Parker. Now, swiftly, we move on to our next speaker, and I'm really delighted to introduce our inspirational student midwife. This is Zahra Zaid, who is at Salford University, and as she's studying as a student midwife, and she's in her third year, and those of you who are student midwives will know getting through the second year, because the second year is quite challenging, I would say, mostly for student midwives. But she's also contributing to improving diversity inclusion in midwifery. So has been involved in some work with that, which I'm hoping she's going to share with us. And she's going to share those perspectives from today's conference, I think, maybe, but she's only got 15 minutes. And also raising some of the issues that are very pertinent to student midwives just now. So welcome, Zahra. Thank you so much for coming. The screen is now yours.
Thank you so much for having me. So I have just been invited to talk about sort of my own experience as a student midwife. I am classed as a senior student midwife because I do fall into the category of not a young student anymore, as I am now 27. But I also fall into the odd category of not having a baby yet. So there is quite a few mature students with quite a few babies and children, but I am not one of them yet. So I'm in a bit of a awkward little group myself, I think. But yeah, so I am third year now and have surpassed the horrible COVID years as a student midwife, especially in second year, as Zee has just mentioned. It has been really, really hectic. I'm not going to deny that. It's been a whirlwind, but I think has prepared us for anything, really. I think it's shown us the resilience and strength that we actually have as people, not only just as midwives. It's not been easy for us, I don't think, with anyone that has had to deal with COVID issues. We've all been impacted differently, and it has been such a blessing in disguise to have such a loving community in maternity and which hospital I'm working at, and also with my cohort at university. So yeah, as Sue mentioned, I have been doing a lot of work externally with diversity and ethnic minorities. I'm hoping to try and create an impact in terms of the midwifery curriculum that we are currently being taught. One of the main factors is that I feel like the curriculum lacks in trying to teach about how to approach different minorities and the care that we do provide, understanding cultures, understanding different needs, being able to identify sort of different illnesses and compared to skin tones and things like that. So I'm hoping to do a lot of work in that. I have also been working with external sort of midwives called Asian and South Asian midwives group to hopefully do some leadership programs to help bring diversity in the workplace as well. So looking forward to it. It's been really, really exciting. I recently did get nominated for a special VIP guest to the Student Nursing Times, and I got to sit with the Chief Executive of NMC, Andrea Sutcliffe, which is such an honour, just being recognised for the work that I have been doing. But it was such a beautiful, such a rewarding place to be, to see how much work goes into nursing and maternity and how passionate and how selfless we are. I think it's the one thing that I absolutely love about this job role, about this degree. I know that you may, as thinking about going into midwifery, you may think that it's a lot to handle and the hours are really long, and there is a lot of stress that comes with it. But the beauty of bringing life into this world is just unmatchable. I just sort of constantly feel so privileged to be at the peak of such an intimate moment of people's lives and be able to bring that life into the world. So yeah, I know it's been a difficult year, and second year especially. That is when you go through your shift and you evolve from your first year brand new student to, okay, let's change this to an expert level, and being able to kind of crack down on dealing with any sort of complex cases. But honestly, so worth it. I'm hoping to also go to Uganda to do my final elective, which luckily enough has been able to be funded through my university. So if you are looking to go into studying midwifery, please make sure you try and find out if there's any abroad placements that you can also apply for. Uganda was one of the places that I had the honour of being a part of a lecture where one of the students is doing her master's here, and she really went into detail about how lovely the care that you provide is so important. It doesn't matter about the environment that you're in. If you're passionate and you care and you love what you do, then take opportunity wherever you are. And that's what's made me come into midwifery and love it even more, because that's what I love to do. I just love to look after women and try and create a positive impact anywhere that I can. But yeah, it is definitely a very demanding job role, a very demanding course. So it's very important to look after yourself I know it's easier said than done, but self-care and reflection on any difficult times is really, really important to be able to identify when maybe you need extra support, when you maybe need some time out, because it is such a demanding course. But we are still human at the end of the day. We're not robots, we're not working to the bone. So it's so important to please look after yourself and use the support. You have so much support around you. We're always, every single one of us are so happy to help you whatever you need. So please reach out whilst you can. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
So that's fabulous, Zahra. I know I only gave you a short time to speak. I just wonder if you had some, because I think your point about support and getting support from other people is really important. I think what came over just then is the fact it's not just from the seniors and your supervising midwife or your educationist, but it's other students that can support you. So
Definitely.
what are your tips for gathering up the best sources of support?
I think when you have opportunity to really engage with the students, you know, the moment that they walk through the door, get to know them, you know, they have a friendly face as well. They have been in your position before, so they understand completely what you're feeling, where you're at, whether you feel like you've not got the confidence. To just really build relationships in that aspect, I think is so important. Every single cohort just has all friendly faces, and we're not gonna stigmatize you all off about the situations that you're in. We're there to kind of give you a hug, really, because that's what you need. You need the reassurance that you're not the only one going through these experiences. So I do think really take advantage of getting to know other students on your cohort and in the other year groups, just to have that extra support that you might need as a student. Because I think senior midwives and your assessors and stuff forget that that you're a student as well, not just there to learn. So I think you need the support as a student with other students, and definitely join the Midwifery Society groups that they have. You know, you have the WhatsApp groups and all the social media pages. It's just so helpful just to basically have a sounding board and have the reassurance that we're in together, we're not alone. I would definitely say.
And I think that's fabulous, the way you're kind of throwing out all the things that you're telling people to get involved and actually look for things and look for supporting from each other. Even though my student days were a long time ago, I can remember teaching a junior student as a student and feeling, actually, as I was teaching, I was thinking, oh, I understand this now. Which can be quite helpful, can't it? Because sometimes, and you don't have to be perfect, of course, whether as a midwife or a student, but having a go at teaching one of your colleagues, and sometimes you as a student might understand something better than one of your student colleagues, and you might be able to kind of help them learn. So that's a really good thing to get people going to each other to support.
100%. Yeah, definitely. I think that we learn from each other always, and I think having those chances to teach each other, also practice your own skills, but also share different approaches, different ideas. I think I agree with you that you end up learning so many more new things when you talk about certain particular issues. For example, like I learned different ways of taking blood when I was teaching the student, and it was just like little things like that that will contribute you to sort of such a long-term effect. So yeah, definitely just have those conversations, and don't be afraid to ask for help, because that's what we are there for. You know, we have been there, and we're still there, we're still learning, so we can learn together.
Oh, that's lovely. That is lovely. And I think what is nice, I know that a lot of midwives themselves are very keen to support students and very happy to teach. And sometimes they get a bit tired, but they're trying as well to support students. And I think it's what comes over from your kind of presentation is very much, working together and learning together, which is fantastic.
Definitely.
to
Yeah, I
share.
agree. Yeah, it's because they're not expecting you to be perfect. I remember the first year student absolutely terrified at the thought of trying to take someone's pulse or taking someone's respirations. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do that? But it is about throwing yourself in there. That's the one thing that you will absolutely love about yourself, is learning the fact that although you may get nervous and you might not think you can do it, but pushing yourself to throw yourself in the deep end and get yourself hands on will be the best thing that you can do for yourself, because it's definitely helped my confidence completely. And knowing that it doesn't have to be perfect, you are being supervised, nothing's going to get stigmatized towards you. You're still a student, so don't worry about making mistakes. You're allowed to keep learning, which I think we always forgot as students, thinking, oh, the moment you're in practice, you're gonna forget and you're gonna get in trouble or something, something's gonna go wrong. But that's not your responsibility. You're there to learn, to take as much opportunity that you can and build those amazing relationships, because you got to remember that's your environment. You're spending majority of your life at work or at uni, so you need to have a nice environment that can work for you and that you can work with. So it's definitely to try and not scare you, but take it as each day, and you'll be amazing. I know.
Fabulous. Zahra, you come out, you are an inspiration, and you're so lovely and positive. And I could imagine if I'm a mum, to see you coming towards me and know you were looking after me, I'd be highly thrilled, because I'd know I'd be okay and you'd be kind and gentle and lovely. I'm just wondering if is there any sort of bad things at the moment for you? Or for your fellow students, because I know it is a hard time, and you have to balance not having very much money and having to work hard.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so staffing, that obviously has been like a nationwide thing, as many of you may know. But so that has put a lot of pressure on the students, especially third years, because they kind of practically treated as like qualified students, and obviously now getting paid for it as well. It does kind of get a bit demoralizing at times, because you think, I'm here because I want to be, and it kind of does take its toll. That's when you think, okay, let's take a moment back, reflect, let's see what we need to prioritize, and then go back into it. So staffing, definitely. I think the morale in the hospital sometimes has been quite hard, because obviously everyone is really stressed following COVID and dealing with all this aftermath of staffing and other stresses and things, and staff changing, senior staffing as well. So you're not able to kind of get to know many of the people that you're working with, which is quite difficult. But yeah, I mean, the part of being a midwife and a student midwife, you don't really have much of a life anyway, unfortunately. So money, I'm not sure is there to even be spent, because you kind of don't have time unless you're doing like an Uber Eats takeaway or something to try and get you through. But yeah, I mean, you also need to know when to have fun. So please take care, have those self-care days on your weekend, go out with your friends and socialize and just switch off, because that's also very, very important. And use that money that you kind of have and you don't have, but you could always bank shift as well. So that's what a lot of students, midwives do, they'll bank shift as a healthcare assistant. And it's actually really good pay, and it comes weekly, so you've got a little something for the weekend. So we can always figure out money situations. I'm sure parents will be happy to give some as well.
Well,
so yeah.
No, I can remember my mum used to give me a little food box every now and then. So I think families are such a big part of this, aren't they?
Definitely.
And I love the way now you've done a Skinner sandwich. So you've given us lovely positive things, a little bit of negative along the way, and then you finished positively. So that's wonderful. Sorry, you've been lovely, and you are really an inspiration. And I think,
thank you.
I would like anyone watching to just absorb some of that lovely positivity and think about what Zahra said about, going out and having some time, having some fun, because you can do it. And you make the most of especially the money, and money is a problem for everyone at the moment, but you make a lot of what you can. So thank you very much for coming along. We're going to have, there might be a chance for questions. So if anyone has any questions, start putting them in now. But we're going to move now from Zahra. We're going to let's have a little rest. And we're going to move now to Debra. And Debra, or Deb, I keep calling her Deb, is one of the team from Maternity and Midwifery Forum. And she is, and you will see from her glamour as well, we have a very glamorous group tonight, a graduate of fashion and design. And she's with us to share about how some of you might wish to get involved in the student festival. And actually, you might get some tips for being involved with any of the festivals. And we very much welcome midwives, student midwives, maternity care support workers, doulas, whatever, being involved, not just coming along, though we love that, obviously, because we love seeing you at the festivals. We also would love if you put papers in and you just engage with us a little bit more. But I'm not going to take Deb's words away. So, Debra, the screen is now yours.
Thank you very much, Sue. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm hoping that I can stay as positive. That was such a lovely presentation, Zahra. So I'm going to try and keep the positivity up with this next little bit. So the Student Midwifery Experience Festival, you may have heard of that before. It's on the 29th of June, so we haven't got long. It is entirely online. And I'm just going to go through the website, actually. So you'll be able to access this from I'm just going to click over and show you here, on our main website, which is maternityandmidwifery.co.uk. So if you go to events, you'll be able to click through to the Student Midwife Experience Festival, and this is where there's much more information on this event. And I'm going to try and keep it to just talking about this event, because I've been doing little Instagram stories and I've jumped from one to the other and it gets so confusing. So we're going to focus on this event. So if you are a student midwife, do listen up now, because this is how you can get lots more involved and hold your own live stream party. So as I say, the Student Midwife Experience ran there in November last year, so you may have heard of it before. It's supported by the Practicing Midwife, the Student Midwife, and the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and it's entirely online. And last year we did live stream parties at quite a few of the universities, which I'm just going to come to in a little bit. So you will see, so there's a little bit of information for you to read here. I'm going to go through the tabs. So this was some of the photos from last year. What the photos don't show is that lots of people had little bake sales, and some charities got involved with the events, and we're there to support you to do that as well. So you can see everyone did have a great time, and as I say, there are just a select few photos. You can see everyone is still wearing their masks there. So yeah, there's some feedback. So there's 20 days to go. I'm just going to quickly zoom back up to the top here without making everyone dizzy. We do have an outline program at the moment, which I'll quickly show you. Hopefully my internet's going fast enough. So we've got Professor Mary Renfrew, who Sue mentioned just earlier, who got an honour, so amazing. Then we have Dr. Jackie Williams, and as I say, over the next week or so, this will fill out much more. We've got Dr. Anna Byram, who was speaking at the Personalised Care event this afternoon in London. So quickly, you can just see the speakers here that we have. We've also got Nicole Rajan-Brown, who I think possibly, so you might correct me if I'm wrong, hosted part of this event last November. So the call for papers close on Friday the 10th, and this page here just gives you lots more information about how you can submit your paper, but it's not difficult at all. We want you to share your experiences, just like you have done there, Zahra, and spread all of that positive energy, as well as obviously talking about how your experience truly has been. So there is some themes that you can stick by, but you don't have to. So we're asking for 500 words, or you can do a 2-minute video and send it to myself. My email is on here somewhere, or I think, oh yeah, so submit here, which takes you through to a submission page on our website. We also have a call for awards. I hope I'm not running over time here, because I could stuck for those to submit an award. So we're looking for, there's 2 categories. So we've got the Midwifery Education Trailblazer of the Year and a Student Midwife Trailblazer of the Year. So yeah, anyone who has inspired you, supported you, and shown great dedication over the last year are the people we want to hear about. And I think it's such a lovely thing to do as a friend, even for yourself, to submit an award on your own behalf as well. You can submit an award for yourself, which sounds funny, but actually I do think you should keep positive about that. So yeah, 2-minute video, or actually I said 500 words, it's only 300 words here. And so I just wanted to quickly, this is the last page, talk slightly, just lastly, on the so it's free to register, and then you can buy a certificate for £15 plus VAT. But the bit that I wanted to focus on is the live stream party bit. So it's £145, and that's something that your university should fund you for. And you can get in touch. My email's here. So what we do is we'll provide you or your Midwifery Society with an organiser's pack. So I've tried to bring together a few things here to sort of show you what's in it. So we've got lots of graphics that you can share on your social media. We've got a poster that you can print off. I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but we can insert your lecture hall there, and then you can print that off and share it around your university. We've also got a watch party toolkit with a big checklist, and we've got a printable agenda as well as technical support all the way through the process. And I just wanted to lastly share some of the universities that requested a toolkit last year. So if you do see, I'm zooming a bit too fast there. If you do see your university on there, get in touch with the head of your Midwifery Society, or your head of year actually might know how to who organised it last year is what I'm trying to say. And I think that's everything from me. I'm sure hopefully some people have some questions, but I think I've covered everything. Thank you.
That's fantastic, Deb. Thank you very much. I mean, I think, I'm assuming there might be some cake recipes in that pack.
Yes, definitely. I could give you some of those. I have loads of cake recipes, and I couldn't find the pictures of the cake from last year. There was so many amazing Midwifery Society cakes. So yeah, we would want to see them again. Definitely.
Yes. I think this is obviously a very normal process for midwives and student midwives. Wherever there's an event, there will be cake. There will be cake. And just for those of you watching and thinking about it, I mean, you can have a mini party. You could just have 2 or 3 of you. You don't have to have this big party. But if you wanted to have a nice big party with lots of you in the university, that would work very well. And you could have make cakes and raise some money for some funds for your society. I mean, there's all sorts of ways of doing that.
Yeah.
And kind of making it an occasion. I think that's what I'm trying to say, because one of the things that's more difficult when you're doing an online event is to get that same feel that you get when you go to a big conference or study day. Yeah. But if you have an event at your university, maybe even 2 universities meet together, that can be very good. It makes it much more of a sharing, and you get to interact with other people, and it becomes an occasion. I think that's what I'm saying, not very well.
No, that's definitely right. So I think it's definitely great to come together in person again. I know we're the middle of the year now, but every time I do meet people in person at the other festivals, I always think that it's so fantastic to be in the room again, and sharing those experiences in person, because they do deliver slightly differently than over Zoom, I personally feel.
Yeah. Having said that, we can do very well on these.
Yeah,
It was a really good event, and I think people are going to really enjoy it. Now I'm getting lots of positive comments. So Lucy says, I'm looking over here at my other screen to say, Lucy says, I agree, so positive, Zahra. And then Zoe says, feeling inspired, thank you, Zahra. And then Leslie Page is saying, love hearing these aspirations, thank you. Lovely, Leslie. A nice hello to Leslie Page too. That's lovely. So we're not getting questions because I think people are just feeling lovely and inspired, which is fantastic. So thank you for both of you. I mean, the other thing is, please, I would say to anyone who's thinking about, you've looked at that list of things that Deb put up about your experience, what you could share. Don't be shy. I mean, I shouldn't have to say that with student midwives, but don't be shy. If you're doing something interesting, or there's a couple of you want to present something interesting, or just your experience of surviving through COVID times, people are going to be interested because everyone's got a different perspective and you learn a little bit more and enjoy a little bit more. So don't feel shy. Do I have to say that, Zahra?
Yes, definitely, I agree.
Are you gonna be putting in a paper? I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Am I putting
in a paper? It's only 500 words or a 2-minute video. I've remembered, you see.
Yeah, could do. Yeah, I look forward to it.
Yeah.
Do you think worth crediting?
That'd
yeah,
be
why
good.
not?
Yay.
Of course.
So I'm having these little things are coming through. I'm getting little screenshots now. Joe D'Agustin, hi Joe, says a huge thank you to the whole MF team for running the Student Midwife Experience Festival. You're doing such a good job in supporting the student midwife population. Thank you. I think that's a cheer all the way around. Thank you, Joe. Yeah. That's lovely.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just waiting to see if there's any other comments. I'm not sure if there's any other comments. So you've got a couple of minutes for anything you'd like to say now. Debra or Zahra, anything you've missed out?
Oh gosh, there's probably so much I've missed out. But I would say, yeah, don't be shy and don't underestimate how much of a great thing it is to submit a paper. And also, so you said that they could present as two. I'm sure if it was a group that they could as well. Yeah, we would absolutely love to hear from you. So I'm just sort of echoing what you're saying. Don't be shy. Yeah.
And I didn't see that you had student electives down, didn't you? Did I see that or didn't I?
What was that for the awards?
Student electives, where students get experience elsewhere. I can't remember if that was on the list.
That's down, but it certainly can go your portfolio. And
you've got something about global, so that might cover it. You see, there's something for you, Zahra.
Yeah, there is.
yeah, definitely.
Because I mean that, and for those of you who are watching who are students who are thinking about doing your elective, some people do go abroad, like Zahra, to Uganda, or you can go anywhere in the world, but actually just going to a different unit in a different part of the country can be really very helpful in understanding things and just working with different people. I don't know if any of your group have done that, Zahra.
Yeah, a couple of students going to Isle of Man, or like down to London, or up to Scotland, even going to Europe countries or working at Switzerland, obviously, because they're so different in the way that they approach maternity. So yeah, there are a couple of students trying to go elsewhere, even go to like local hospitals like St Mary's or within Shore, just to get sort of a different perspective. With the new trust policies and things, to see how they work and if we can implement it better in our local hospital.
That's good. There's some ideas for everybody. Now I'm going to finish off now. I've got two more. Karen says, what equipment do we need for a viewing party? This one's for you, Deb.
Equipment. All you really need is to book a lecture theatre at your university, or if not a theatre, if it's a smaller group, just a room. And it is, I think this one's from 12 till 4, so it's not the whole day. So you don't need to book out a room for the whole day, which is a huge plus as well. But that's all you need really. So someone perhaps who's sort of technically minded, but we can definitely support you with the technical side of things. So really just a room and someone to
Yeah, this is opportunity, a leadership opportunity.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. And there's one more. Abby says, Deborah, if societies sign up to do a party, do the attendees get certificates or do they have to be purchased separately? That's a very good question, Abby.
That is a very good question. Thank you very much for asking it. They are included.
Excellent. There you are. There's a money saving tip. Get signed in, and of course for some of you, your universities will be interested in signing up for this, so do take the chance to do this. Now, you see, I did say to Deb and Zahra, this hour goes so quickly, it always goes really quickly, and it goes quickly because I've got some fantastic guests, I've got a wonderful audience out there, so thank you to them for that, and to Deb and to Zahra for being with us this evening and having such a good session earlier. Now, I just have to do a few little reminders. Remember, these resources will be available on the website and Facebook on Friday. And you need to think about booking for the student celebration. So book now while it's in your mind. Free, remember. And there's the Manchester Festival on the 21st of June. There's still places on there. You can go online or you can go face to face. Sadly, there seems to be a train strike. We're hoping it's going to be called off because that will kind of interfere with some of the face to face, but it will be online as both. And of course, the Wales and Southwest festivals on the 13th of September. So do book for that if you can. Next week on Maternity and Midwifery Hour, we've got Professor Amy Brown talking passion, empathy and burnout in lactation support. There's something to conjure with. So in the meantime, stay safe and stay well, and we'll see you next week. And thank you to everybody.